Hey guys, I'm Chris,
Now, Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits, the Scot Harvath podcast. How you doing today, Mike?
Good, dude. Coming off that interview with Brad Thor, I feel like I'm still riding high. I'm on cloud nine. How about you?
Yeah, I feel great. Excited to talk the second half of this book. Yeah, what a great interview we had last night. Was it last night? 2 nights ago? I forget. They're all blending together.
Right.
But yeah, he was gracious enough to take a little more than an hour out of his time, talk to us. He's, like we said, I don't want to take away from that pod, so go listen to that interview if you haven't. But we said that he's such a great guy. Took the time to talk to us, actually cared. Very sincere. I didn't feel any fakeness. So
No, genuine was the word I think I used last
yes,
pod, and
genuine.
I stand by it. I absolutely stand by that.
Yep, yep.
Well, Chris, like you said, we are getting into part two today. I'm really excited to get your scores on this one. A couple of our patrons have told us they love this book. Mark, he rated it very high on our scorecard. It
I
was
saw that.
nearly a perfect score. So I'm a little curious how you and I are going to end up. I personally, I haven't given it a score. I haven't really went through it. I wanted to process it here on the pod out loud and definitely get your take on a few things before I give it the final judgment.
Yeah, no, I. This book is interesting to me, and I don't know if we can kick off the second half of our discussion. Not that it's the negative thing; it just felt different. And we talked about the first half, and then we're going to talk about the second half here. And we did cut it like sort of halfway through the audiobook. But to me, the second half, we're really not taken outside of Scott. Like it's Scott's story. It's Scott's story in Ukraine. We have a little bit of tie-ins with some other people. Like there's maybe one or two chapters with the troll. There's one or two chapters with either Wilson or the FBI agents, and then there's that only one chapter with Gretchko, which is a hilarious chapter. I want to talk to you about that one with the drunk Putin.
Yeah, oh,
Not
yeah, yeah,
Putin, but like essentially Putin, right? But I feel like either in past Brad novels or some of the other things we've read recently, there would have been a lot more jumping back and forth. And I felt like definitely after listening to Brad tell us about what this book kind of meant to him, it felt right. Like, did you find yourself, just you were immersed in that Ukraine story and like you wanted to be there? Like, I wrote this down. Like, did you want more? Did you want more story? Was there enough? Like, it's a short book. It's just a short audiobook too.
yeah. It's oh boy, I don't know if I'd call it a double-edged sword because let me just start by saying yes, 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 yes. I wanted more because Scott in Ukraine, and he doesn't meet up with the team, Hookah, Jax, Biscuit, and Kruger. He doesn't meet up with them really until the second half. So we're only getting half of this book where he is actually embedded with a team of operators doing what they got to do. So the action in the first half was incredible in Ukraine. I would say it maybe even gets better here. A couple
Yes.
of the assaults on the Ravens in the villages and then culminating to the final attack on the fortress. So in that regard, I thought this book was lights out. I meant to tell Brad, I think it's his best action writing, start to finish, in any of his books throughout the series. The best, bar none, action start to finish that he's ever written. So in that regard, I loved Scott in Ukraine, Scott and the team, going all over the countryside. And eventually, perhaps my favorite scene, maybe in the whole book, is when he's running with the RPG slung over his back through the village after they had taken the hostages. And he's just calling an audible, hopping fences, running across fields. We'll get to it, but all that stuff I loved, could have taken more of. It was incredible. The double-edged sword is that the first half also set me up to really be invested in the side plots.
Hmm.
So when we did leave Ukraine, which I didn't want to, but when we did, it was surprisingly more intriguing than I expected. Carolyn and Fields as FBI agents, love them as the good cop, bad cop kind of duo, the old guard and the next generation in the Bureau. I was really loving it. I'm not sure if I was fully satisfied with how that wrapped up. Or maybe I should put it, I'm not completely satisfied with how it didn't really interact at all with what the Troll and Scott are doing in Ukraine. yes, they track down the conspiracy theorists who are trying to turn the American tide in public against people like Scott, but there was no real direct link in the end. That I kind of wanted them to uncover this piece of intelligence or a certain name that would link back to the Ravens, and help Scott and the Troll achieve the mission. So it just kind of left me wanting there a little bit. Same thing with Senator Wilson, Paulson, and all the other things that he's doing. I really liked when he got caught in the end, but before he got caught, I was looking for him to make one more move, one more big kind of, I'm going to screw somebody over, I'm going to put somebody's life in danger. Just make that real big, big dick energy play that ultimately fails and really causes catastrophe, so that when he gets taken down and the FBI or the windbreakers, show up and scare him out of his boots, quite literally, I wanted that to have a little bigger impact than it did. So, double-edged sword is absolutely love Scott in Ukraine, everything about it. But the parts that got me hyped about the two side plots in the first half, I'm not sure how satisfied I was with how they wrapped up. Would you agree, or were you still digging those in the second half?
No, well, I just think that it's hard to dig when they just weren't there.
Yeah,
like
it's true.
as I'm writing out, the chapters or the scenes we need to discuss, we're just with Scott. And I almost think that you could get rid of the Senator. I mean, obviously you need to. I could see what Brad was going with. He wanted to sort of sell the entire picture, right? To show that not only is this a war going on, literally, the actual literal war, but all the other players that are being involved and how that's interacting back home with our politics, our justice system, whatever, people who are in either Russian spies or people who are taking the Russian propaganda and media bait. So I could see where he's going. It's like filler, but I could have just done away with all that and just, I would have appreciated this, and I appreciate this book, but if this had just been Scott and, maybe the Troll, obviously put him there, but, just tracking him from Belarus, Poland, Ukraine, back to Poland, like that, and give me like a little bit more time with the boys, that would have been even more elevated than what I think this is. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, I think you're right. The only thing I would say is I surprisingly liked it in the beginning of the book.
Sure.
And it was
you don't know where it's going to go. You don't know
because I don't know. Right. It was that buy-in that made me, because I thought exactly what you were. Let's stay with Scott. Let's be in Ukraine. That's the whole point of this book. And I'm kind of maybe being a hypocrite because I was apprehensive about this being a singular story that was just too narrow. And before this book came out, I felt pressure. I was like, man, you're doing Ukraine. It's another Scot Harvath book. This thing has to hit. This has to be a rock solid book. And it absolutely was. And I think it was way better than I was expecting. But if I were going to nitpick, it's the Senator Wilson stuff and the Carolyn stuff, which in the end, I don't think satisfied. And you're right. If none of those people were in this book, that wouldn't make it a worse book.
No, it wouldn't.
It definitely wouldn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you.
But at the same time, I'm going to, again, we're just
at the same time, I love them. I love Fields.
We're a bucket of contradictions.
She's badass.
I think that Brad told just enough, he kind of even said that he had to tone things down what he did. And I think the story that he did end up telling, on the front lines had amazing action sequences we're going to get into, had just enough, little quips of humor here and there to, elevate you while also bringing you down, going into that convent and describing the horror, what went on there, or, even harken back to the prologue and thinking about that and then thinking about what these people he's trying to stop are, is just, obviously he mentioned in his interview that he's pulling he didn't have to think too hard to come up with new scenarios because all of this stuff has been done before, whether or not it's been doing right now. It's, happened in Germany, happened during World War II, happened in, pick a war, and stuff like this has happened, so there's there's going overboard, or there's, sort of hitting that right tone of cool action, capturing the realness of, what he's trying to tell in the moment.
Yeah.
And then also, having it be a Scott Harvath novel, and having him be a badass, be funny, be a brute. There's this one line where I think it describes like what I'm trying to say the best, where Kruger, Biscuit, they're all joking, and they're asking like, what should we ask for next? And Scott comes back and says,
Yeah.
how about we save an American,
And the girls.
And then the two girls. And then he immediately realizes like, yeah, it shouldn't have been that hard. Like that was uncalled for. They were just, these guys are over here sacrificing just like I am.
Yeah.
And that kind of like sort of tells like the fine line.
Yep.
He's trying to tell in the story, like to be, it obviously has to be a bestseller, it has to be an action, but he also, he wants to make a statement. And I feel like I really want you guys to go listen to the interview, because at the very end, he lays out, we kind of dive into what he thinks. And, we know that he does it. He puts what he thinks in his novels, whether it's harking back to the war in Iraq, the, Taliban, whatever. He's not going to be blunt. It's on the page. Yeah. And I think he did a good job. So that's, so.
I agree. And I think your point was perfect when Brad was saying how he had to dial back the humor because it was such a deadly scenario in which these guys are operating. But at the same time, that humor needs to be present, or else you just can't handle the job. You're right that that's perfectly summed up with Biscuit and the guys. And Biscuit was that one who was a little more nervous too. He was like that quieter, shyer guy. So you do wonder about him. So when they're all joking,
when I thought he died, like I got emotional, man. Like a little bit. I was like, oh shit, he's gonna. And then he didn't die, and I'm like, all right, cool. Like it's better. But
dude, I agree.
Damn.
We were so bought in, and we were only with these guys for half the book, less maybe. Where we were truly hearing from them, and they don't even have a lot of words. Like in terms of they don't speak a lot, yet we were so connected to them, and that's brilliant writing to make us buy in. How many times has Brad? We covered the first half of Brad Thor's books. How many times has he introduced us to a team? Like the one in New York City. What was that, Blowback? He's got a whole team there he's working with. Every other one, when he's on his adventures, he's kind of assembling and getting these teams of guys. This is definitely one of the most memorable. Like, I don't know if it's because it's the current Ukraine conflict, so we can kind of picture it in our head, but Hookah, Jax, Kruger, and Biscuit, to me, are just like right there. They're so present. They're so vivid. And I really think it's one of the better teams that he assembled to be around Harvath. I do wonder, and I get the argument of the Ukrainians couldn't spare anybody. Did you feel it was a little off-putting that it was all Americans, Canadians, and Brits on his team? Like it was only International Legion guys? I would have loved one Ukrainian specialist or a translator. I know that's very hard for them to give up, and so I bought into it. It didn't affect my buy-in. But I was just like, oh, it's just Western dudes over here, fighting it out for him.
But I liked how we had that interaction with him and the GRU.
Yeah.
On the train. And then that guy who he got his APC blown up. And then he's like, all right, if you figure out how to allow me to save this Jeep, which Scott makes like the chalk paint, like, which was pretty cool.
The Russians did. I didn't get your Jeep blown up. The Russians did.
Like I like that little interplay, like that. That was needed. But like if that guy had been there, continued on with the group, like I feel like that, maybe that would add a little bit extra. But yeah, I think like he was going for this because he wanted to tell the story of like, there are these people over there that are ex special forces who have given up their lives to either, and like you said, like you can either believe in the cause or you can be itching for that. You're sort of scratching your itch since you got out, or both. Like a lot of them are both. So
yeah, that dude was awesome. Heavy, but however you say his name, he was, and that's kind of like in the first half we talked about Ole, the young kid who was fighting this war, and needlessly, Scott was very clear, like this guy's not a soldier. He shouldn't have to be here with a gun in his hands. He should be at college studying somewhere. And then Heavy, you're like, this guy put in his time, like he's a truck driver now.
He was a truck driver. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, he's just a laborer. He's just trying to, take care of his family, earn a buck and do what he's got to do. Yet he's giving up everything to transport kind of behind enemy lines, bringing people and supplies. And I'm just like, I love, and then So they're not the only Ukrainians we meet. We meet the whole Bush telegram people.
Right. So I feel like that's where we're getting our Ukrainian elements, meeting the
Yeah.
locals.
And I agree. And I was okay with that, with the villagers and then those two men we just talked about being the Ukrainian kind of perspective.
The
I
old
think that's
lady.
really well done. And the old lady and then the younger lady who has the cell phone, who's actually contacting the other villages. I really like that. I was just wondering, why not one Ukrainian on their team? Or even a Pole or, someone from a NATO country in Central Europe that is also given instead of just the American, the Brit, and, the Canadians. But it's a small nitpick, and it's probably not a valid one on my part, simply because he did paint an amazing cast of Ukrainian heroes who were doing all sorts of jobs to contribute to the front line. So it's probably not a fair criticism on my end.
Maybe these are based off, he didn't say it, but maybe these are based off of real people that maybe he didn't meet, but he did research on, that he either looked up on YouTube, or because he said he just watched a lot of, which I don't know how you could do that, but watched a lot of like GoPro footage of these soldiers over there. So,
well, yeah, there was, when he was saying that, there was one guy on Twitter that I was following in the early days of the war who was doing that same thing. And it's like, to be honest, this book felt exactly like that footage, and the pictures that he was posting and everything that I saw felt just like. So talking scorecard in a little bit, the setting, you cannot have done a better job, I don't think, painting what it looks like. This train, we didn't even talk about this, the train going across from Poland into Ukraine. It felt so cool to be on that train the way it was described. So I think everything about the setting, even if we're not traveling super heavy globally, the setting was still just lights out.
Yeah, and I think this book is very crisp, clean. Like there's no wasted word, and he does a great job of painting that landscape, allowing us to understand what these villages are, where Scott is going, that, even at the end, like describing that fortress that they're going through and like the various rooms and like where everything is set up, describing the vineyard that they go to and they hold out on, previously describing, the various places that Scott has been. I think he does a great job of that. And to go back to just 1 second on the point you said about, I think Brad does a great job of getting us to buy in quickly to like a ragtag team. Like,
yes,
the characters that like last longer, I feel like he, the ones that hit, but like, you think back to like his first team, what was that guy? I'm blanking on his name, but he was in like a couple ones.
There was Gordo, Aviliano.
Gordo,
I wonder what happened to him.
I know, like I bought into him, and
the Scottish guy.
Yeah, and then he brings in. Oh, right, the first one, like his goofball team from the Secret Service.
Yeah,
but yeah, like you mentioned the team from Blowback or Takedown, whatever the New York one.
It was Takedown, right? It was Takedown. Yeah, yep, that's what I meant.
He does a really good job at introducing a new character, like these one-off side characters, and investing in them and getting you to believe as a reader that they're important, even though they, sometimes they do go on to make a couple more appearances, or like the troll, who knows? That's be a good question to ask him. Did he know that the troll was going to be in every single book, going forward, almost every single book going forward when he made that character?
Yeah. Well, you remember, it was just a couple of books ago on the pod where we got the first hint of the troll, and we were like, yo, that was definitely a seed planted that he knew needed to grow. And then like 2 books later, the troll is actually present, not just a hint. Oh, there's this guy selling, secrets. Then we meet the troll, and then you just know right from the get-go that he had a gold mine of a character. And every book since has essentially had Nicholas in it. So I don't think, I think the second he made that character, it tweak something, and he was like, I think this is going to be a long-term play.
You could tell, like with some other ones that he maybe wanted to keep around, he gets tired with. Like,
it's true. Yeah.
More often than not, it's Scott's love interest,
Right.
And at the moment, like, we got to talk about the Solvi of it all, or, sure, even like Nicholas's wife, not girlfriend, like of it all.
We didn't ask him that.
I felt like it wasn't the right conversation to ask it. I felt we talked about before, and I was like, should we? Like, we'll see how the interview goes, and like we'll know if we can talk about it. And like, it just didn't feel like the right time.
Yeah, we wondered if we were going to ask about this, and then we didn't. But for me, I didn't ask because I forgot. I was so wrapped up in what we were
Right.
talking about. Looking back, I do want to know the answer. So for the audience, we'll tell you what Chris and I are talking about. What happened with the Troll's family? Because in Rising Tiger, we know that, and it was his wife, right? They were married, and she was pregnant, going to have a baby. And what did I say? It was
It's the Havana syndrome like incident, right?
right, exactly.
The Chinese are doing the Havana syndrome,
but it was
the
near dark.
Russians, I forget.
I went back to Near Dark or Black Ice, and the Troll did say the baby's due in 7 months. So that was three books ago or so. The Troll did say, she's due in 7 months. So she's already a few months into the pregnancy, which means by Rising Tiger, she's absolutely far along. And we were worried about her. And then here, he's just off in Ukraine doing what he does. The ending, he says, I'm going to stay here. I have more work to do here. He even tells, I don't know if it was Kozar or one of the other guys.
He tells Julia,
I don't have a wife or I'm not married. So I'm like,
so you mentioned that to me, that maybe he does that because he knows that Julia's the mole.
He can't trust anyone, and especially her. Yeah.
Or maybe he can't trust anyone, so he's just not trying to give any personal information up. So you could sort of brush that aside.
But when he stays at the end, when he's so gung ho of I have work to do here,
that's weird.
Especially if she was already a few months pregnant as early as Near Dark, like it was Near Dark or Black Ice where I looked up. He said that, so I'm like, there's no way. Like, what happened?
Yeah, and to have no mention of like what that was a big part of him and her being attacked
in Rising Tiger.
Like to have no mention of that was just weird to me. So
same here.
But he did mention like these things are written to be standalone, and sometimes authors just get tired of something they wrote, and that this gives them the ability to not, and only sickos like us actually pick up on it. I would like my listeners to, are we wrong on this? Were you thinking the same thing? Like, what the hell is going on with Nicholas? Because we're so bought into the Troll and like his family and his family life, and I don't know. That was weird to me.
Yeah, if you are like us, give us a hashtag, Daddy Troll. Yeah, I gotta know. Do you guys care as much as us? And to me, if it was just an oversight, I really can't believe that's the case. The way Brad is so tight with his writing and his stories. If it was an oversight, okay, sure. But if you intentionally played out the Troll, family man, pregnancy, going to be a dad for a few books, and you just about face and decide to drop it, and you're going to act like it never happened moving forward, to me, that's a big no-no. I won't say it's unforgivable, but it's it will sting. I'll put it that way. It will absolutely sting.
I got to go back and reread the first chapter when Nicholas is with Scott and see if anything comes up, because maybe I just missed it.
Like how's the baby or anything?
Yeah, like, something like that. I'll go back and then on the next pod I'll follow up on that. But
yeah, guys, we want to hear your thoughts on this. Maybe we're crazy. Actually, I know we're crazy, but maybe you also are crazy with us. I don't know. Can I bring up one more while we're on this? Mm-hmm. Because another key player the Troll is working with, besides Yulia, is Kozar. Really like Kozar. Did you also have suspicions when he was watching the CCTV footage and the Troll is explaining to Yulia all the different operations that he's referencing from World War II and the Cold War? And he says something, or Yulia says like, "Oh wow, that's very clever. Oh, it's working like a double agent. So you find the mole, but you don't expose the mole. Instead, you use the mole and you feed the mole fake information so that they bring that fake information back to their handlers." And Yulia's like, "Oh, that's very clever." And then Kozar is watching on TV and he says, "Very clever indeed." And the chapter ends. Did you not have a hint of suspicion that maybe he was the mole?
I thought maybe that Kozar thought that the Troll was the mole at that moment,
Oh. When he says very clever indeed, and it's a typical Brad Thor cliffhanger, I interpret it as, oh shit, can I no longer trust Kozar? So
Oh,
when the mole
interesting.
was revealed as Yulia, it was like a burden off my shoulders. It was a relief that I knew Kozar was clean. I don't know. Maybe I read that wrong, but that cliffhanger, I really did like that little end to the chapter. Very clever indeed.
So speaking of cliffhangers, we don't necessarily get a quintessential Brad cliffhanger at the end of this novel. It's a little more wrapped up. Like Scott, essentially says, "Let them try to stop me," while he goes to hang with Salvi. But I wanted to ask, do you think what he did with the troll and Julia, is that the cliffhanger that we're supposed to expect? Are we supposed to then expect to follow up on that? Because we like are supposed to deduce that the troll has figured out that Julia's the mole, but there's no repercussion. We never find out what the repercussions of this are. And like, are we supposed to then believe that we're going to follow up on this, or no?
I don't know. I can't see the next book following up on it, but I think it's just supposed to be left to our imagination that the troll sticks around a little longer and uses her and feeds her fake information and is able to help bring the thing, use her as a tool. But I agree. I don't know how that worked as a cliffhanger. And another one, Gretchko defecting. I had the complete wrong read on that when Brad talked to us and said he wanted to basically make Gretchko almost sympathetic in that he realizes, he was working for buffoons and he was ready and just sick of Peshkov and this other oligarch because, the oligarch took his girlfriend and married her and basically destroyed that part of his life. And Peshkov is a bumbling idiot. So he was turning because he legitimately was giving up on that leadership in Russia. That's not how I read it at all. When it happened,
Yeah.
I read it as, oh crap, this dude is like 7 layers deep and he's going to go defect to the West, but secretly be a mole and
Right.
use Salvi's naivete or the whole like Norwegian intelligence apparatus to get into the American intelligence field and secretly be a fake defector and really be working for Russia from the West. I thought he was going to play Salvi. So I was really excited. The next book, that's going to be it, Like Gretchko is this Russian defector, intelligence operative, but who is still playing the game, even though now we and the Norwegians think he's on our side. I thought we were going to get some real like Le Carre kind of mole defector story, but it sounds like Brad wanted us to read it as Gretchko was in the end just kind of a guy with a conscience who was ready to come clean.
Yeah, I think he wants us to think that he's done with that story too.
Yeah. I don't think I read that as a done and dusted kind of storyline there when he met Salvi.
No, like I to me right now that I'm like talking it out, I think there are no cliffhangers. Like this is the clearest,
It's wrapped.
like wrap story. And it, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. What are you really going to, there's no outcome yet to it. Obviously you have to think about he's writing the next book now. And so we're still in the midst of it. Nothing's really changed. It's a war of attrition. So where else is there to go with this story? Nowhere. So you have to kind of do a hard reset, and boom, Scott can literally do anything
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Though the reason I really liked the ending at first, and knowing this information now, I'm a little hesitant about the ending because I really like the fact that it seemed Gretchko defecting to Salvi, Scott and Salvi about to get together. It almost seemed to me like, okay, there's going to be a part 2. And the good news here is that Salvi's job is going to align with what Scott and Nicholas have been doing.
I mean, he's leaving it open. It could be. It could be. I was really excited that was going to happen because the moment they canceled their date in Poland and Scott had to leave on a mission and Salvi said, I understand, I'm really busy too. I was like, okay, here's another typical way we're going to get out of a Scot Harvath relationship. Right.
How many times has that happened? They mutually part ways, going back to the early books, So I'm like, oh, darn.
I thought for sure Salvi was gone, but they're engaged, right? Like, so.
Exactly. They're engaged. So they have to come back. But are we just going to keep doing this dance of, oh, I got a phone call, I have to leave now? And I thought Gretchko defecting could be the perfect way their universes collide. And there's going to be some operational missions that they can do or at least plan together moving forward. I hope we go that route. It doesn't have to be with Gretchko could be another kind of mission that the Norwegians and our intelligence and the Carlton group need to work together on. Maybe a Finland story. I don't know. But I was really happy the worlds were going to collide. And I hope we don't have to read it as that's done and dusted. It's over.
Well, I think it could go either way. So
it could.
We
it's
don't
open.
know.
It's open.
It's open. Yeah. He's left himself the ability to either build upon this or go a completely different way.
So true.
And like either way, I think people can be satisfied.
Yeah. Here's another amazing opportunity and door that's open. Because this has been done in all the great series. And definitely I'm thinking Vince Flynn and Mitch Rapp. 2, 3, 4 books from now plus. Can you imagine if Asha or VJ or Gretchko or Jax or Biscuit, any of these people from these last few books that we really loved and felt we didn't get enough of, if they come back in some way? I just think it'd be so cool that the doors open on all these incredible characters Brad created the last few books. Down the line, who knows which one will come back into the universe and cross paths again with Scott. I think there's a real open canvas to do that as well.
Yeah.
All these Druzia, you might say. All these friends. Druzia. I love that. Oh, that is when an author is a true artisan, at the height of their craft. The way he brought Druzia back, which the old lady says in the village.
Right.
And it's only one of the few words he could pick up on or what she's saying. And then he goes and says it to the girls to calm them down. And he also hands them the picture. The picture was what the old lady gave to him, pressed into his hand before he left. He almost didn't get to say goodbye to her, the old lady. I loved how the picture and Druzia, friends, came back in the end. I just think that's a perfect little device to use.
Yeah. So do you want to get into the scorecard and talk a little bit more about these the action scenes? That's like the last. Is there anything else you want to talk with in terms of like the FBI agents or the side plots?
No, I think we really gave a very general, broad overview of our feelings on a lot of things. So I think getting into the numbers and rating things specifically will go a long way. Because action, I actually want to get into a few of the specifics. We didn't do too much nitty gritty here. We get a lot of action. So what are you going to give it as a score? And what was your favorite scene in the second half?
What, do I go 10?
I'm wondering that too.
Do I go as high as a 10? Because it's pretty damn good. I fuck it. I gotta give it a 10 because So it's either got to be. So if I'm going second half alone, because I really liked like the attack on the convoy from the previous one, from the first half of the book. But I'm probably gonna go like the precursor attack to like the final attack where
they take the hostages.
They take the hostages.
Yep.
Getting the just the logistics of that, like driving in with that service road and like the whole planning aspect of it, and then like everything goes in. You have a plan, but literally halfway through, your best laid plans are they're just that, they're plans. Like
they don't survive first contact with the enemy.
Exactly. So that scene is freaking awesome. Obviously there's emotional stakes with Biscuit going down. They're able to, save him. No, does Biscuit go down in the second one?
That's the final attack.
That's the final attack. Yeah. But, just the whole logistics around that was really cool. So I probably lean more towards that, but the final takedown, on this compound, drawing them out, just the various, like it is so propulsive, the reading of it, they're moving from scene to scene, and then like as soon as they reach a precipice, boom, they reach more people, and they have to pull back, and then they have to go up, and then there's a gunner, and then they have to figure out, all right, we go around to take out this machine gun, but there's people coming around, there's frags, even who's he with? He's with Hookah, right? Who gets shot in the face, but his his helmet and his NVGs save him, and then he gets shot again in the arm. Or maybe that was the first shot. But anyways,
and they got the stretcher. They're moving Biscuit out on the stretcher and everything. Or Anna Royko
out on the stretcher. Yeah.
Dude, good stuff. I agree with you. 10 on action because of all this. Although you're right, my favorite scene of the second half, I think the train scene in the first half is going to take the best action overall. But it's when he slings that RPG over his back after taking the hostages at the security checkpoint in the front of the village or the back of the village, and he realizes they've got RPGs and heavy weapons. He goes, fuck it, changing plan. We're going to blow all these motherfuckers up. And he runs through the village with that RPG. Oh my God. I absolutely love that. I was so into the story at that point.
Well, in the deception too, like they drive, they leave like the Jeep there after they've driven like the hostages out to
Yep.
bring it back to then blow it up.
And then
so
blow
that
it
way
up.
It doesn't look like they actually took hostages,
Exactly.
in case, yeah.
I love that. And I liked leading up to that scene when he's brainstorming ideas. I forget who he was driving with, if it was Jax or Kruger or whoever. It was Hookah. But they're driving together and they're both kind of coming up with ideas of how we're going to hit the Ravens once we track them down. And I thought it was really cool. Everything about that sequence was awesome. One ding, which might be a plot ding here. It built some suspense when one of the guys is like, so we take the hostages. What are you going to do? Just interrogate them right there on the street and get your answers? Scott's like, don't worry about what I'm going to do. I'll get the answers from them, especially if we get more than one. I'll definitely get the answers. So here I am thinking we're going to get an awesome interrogation scene.
Right.
We're going to get some Mitch Rapp, James Reese interrogation stuff. But no, the guys just start talking like these Ravens. I'm like, I was a little underwhelmed. It helped with the propulsiveness, I think, of the pacing.
It didn't slow it down, yeah.
It didn't slow it down for sure. It helped us get to the final scene at the fortress, but I would have loved a good interrogation scene. I just don't know if I could buy into the fact that these guys just spoke so easily and gave up everything and all the details.
Yeah, but you gotta
were
remember they're just criminals, dude. Like
It's true.
not. It's not like they're not. Converts to the cause. They're not.
It's true.
True terrorists. They're not.
They're not true believers.
They're not military trained.
It's
they're gonna sing like canaries to save their ass.
Yeah. Okay.
Fair. You might get one that like wouldn't talk, but like, odds are like
the other ones, yeah.
Okay. But no, I agree with you. I was expecting that scene to be a little bit more than just like the troll on a video link, like confirming the Russian was okay. But yeah, it was like, all right. But I think it's like more so what you were saying in the first half, that like he didn't want to slow himself down. Like at this point he's humming, we got to get to the final fight,
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I would also say the communication with the troll, and I understand that, being tracked, and the Russians had that device they had to blow up about tracking too many cell phones in one spot. Somehow, if the troll's intelligence gathering plus the Bush telegram could have been what helped Scott out, and maybe that's just not the case on the ground, is that there's no central office where the intelligence is being fed to the front lines in an efficient way. So it's probably accurate the way it happened. But I would have liked the troll one more thing that helped Scott on his journey. One more interaction or nugget that he was able to provide. Just felt a little slim, the Scott and the trolls tag teaming the operation, which is probably true, which is the situation on the ground. But I wanted just a little bit more of him in on the action.
Yeah, I think that just goes to what our earlier point was in the sense that you could tell that Brad was just more interested in honing in with Scott and just like let the other things sort of wrap them up quicker.
Yeah. So what does all that mean for plot and buy-in for you? This is tougher.
I'm going to ding plot a little bit, or where I elevated action, I'm going to ding plot a little bit in the sense that we're talking about it, and not to say like, again, this is just, I have to give it a score. Not to say I didn't love the plot, but some of the secondary things that were really built up well in the first half of the novel didn't quite land as hard as the entire Scott story did.
Yeah.
And so I got to dig. I got a ding plot there. And so I'll go with a nice like 8.5. Solid score.
Yeah, I hear you. Because of those things, I'm going to go to an 8. Just a couple little nitpicks I brought up already. However, I'm going to say, although I docked 2 points here for all these things, it's not going to bring down my buy-in all that much. I'm going to go 4.5. I want to say
I'm bought into everything. Like there's nothing that I don't believe. There's nothing that I didn't think would truly happen. Other than like the only thing you can nitpick is like, why the fuck is Scott even there? In the first place. Like
I bought into that.
That's like but if you think about it, like I think Brad does a good job of explaining. All right, he's just being put on these missions, and that's one question I wish I'd asked Brad. Like, what's this deal with the Carlton group and Scott, going on right now? Like,
And
there's
Gary
there's
Lawler.
something in Lawler. We didn't ask him about the absence of
Yeah.
Gary. So, but yeah, no, there's nothing really that's so thin. I feel like I need to dock at points. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going 5.
A little more info about the Carlton group, where they've been this whole time, Gary's leadership of it. Yeah, yeah, I hear you there. No, I agree. My half to go to a 4.5 is not necessarily all that. I was bought in the entire way. I was even bought in so much more than I thought I would be. With the Ukraine stuff, I was a little nervous. How are you going to do it? Is it going to be right? It was. I was like, what's the side plot going to be? This Carolyn Fields? Loved it. Most of the story, absolutely loved where they were going. My half a point is the ending. If there's one point I wasn't bought into this book, it was the conversation with essentially Zelensky on the train back to Poland.
Mm,
It was the wrap up of the troll filling us in. Oh, Biscuit survived. Great. I was happy about that, but just being told it. Yulia's the mole. Okay, I was really wondering, was it Kozar? Was it someone else? Okay, cool, it was her. Didn't go anywhere. It all just kind of, and then let's just go arrest Greg Wilson. FBI shows up. Okay, great. All of those storylines I was really digging. I'm not sure if they had the pop at the very end, or this massive, like once we took down the Ravens and got the Colonel, and the fight with the Colonel was really cool. Once we got that, the book was over for me. So the remaining, however many pages it was, 30, 40, the denouement was just a little boring. So another small nitpick there.
yeah, it's almost like, would you have rather just had the fight and then Scott leave? Like he goes back home. I felt like that would have just told the story better. Like
Yep. You wrap up the Greg Wilson getting arrested, the
before
chapter before the fortress hit. You wrap up Yulia being the mole right
before.
before that, or right in the middle of that, and then you cut back to it, and then he fights the Colonel. Like, I think a
'Cause all that
little
stuff
tinkering there.
didn't matter to me after getting the Ravens. Like, is that's what
Agreed.
this plot was about. So
Agreed.
I wanted the epilogue to purely be
Yeah.
maybe a conversation with the boys, like
A
talking with
debrief.
Hookah about, oh, actually Biscuit, it's good, he's going to be okay, like,
Yeah.
oh, that's awesome,
I
like
agree.
that kind of thing. Where are you going back? Like, oh, I'm going back to Poland to meet my fiance, like something like a quick. It could have been like, but we're not authors, so
No, we're not authors, but just as the reader's perspective, I felt that exact same way. Another cool one, and this would have been a little too Vince Flynn, a little too Vince Flynn, but the Colonel slips away out of that village somehow. And then the epilogue is the troll works Yulia, gets some random piece of information, and the troll does his wizardry, connecting the dots. And whatever the information she gives up is that little tiny piece of the puzzle he needed to connect it to the Colonel's whereabouts. And then because of that, boom, Scott can move on the Colonel. And that could be the final scene. Or he moves on the Colonel, and then he's getting congratulated by Zelensky on the train back to Poland. Yeah. So only half a point. Only half a point. I'm not going big on it, but something about that ending just wasn't as satisfying as I had hoped. Since we said the Colonel, though, we're talking bad guys. Give me your bad guy score. This includes the Colonel, the Ravens, Wilson, Paulson, everything. What do you think?
so it's kind of the hardest score to give for me, because the Colonel was cool, but I wasn't as bought in on him. I felt like there could have been a little bit more backstory with him, and I just never really felt that Wilson was a villain. He's
Yeah,
more of
same.
like a pawn. I was more scared of not Kozar, more scared of Kretschko than anything, and then he
Yeah.
turns out to be this defector. So like he's not a bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Nistal, this other guy, Wilson's handler.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right,
Eh.
interesting side guy, but I'm probably just gonna go 4, like because
Yeah.
mainly because the badass Colonel fight scene, like that
Yes.
elevates him.
Agreed.
If he doesn't have that, then I think the bad guy score is pretty low.
I think I agree. You have to remember the way the Ravens are set up in the prologue, getting Anna Royko.
That's cool. Like that
That
stuff is cool. And like this
that's a
idea
winner.
of this
Yep.
mental, group of mental institution criminals, whatever, like that.
Yeah.
That is cool. And I realized like, no, he doesn't want to give anyone like a true face, except for this colonel guy who's creepy,
Yep.
watching people. But I'm getting like my back. This backstory wasn't the guy who had a mom who was raped. That was
I thought that was the Colonel.
oh, that is this guy.
I think so. Yeah. It's like dead center of the book. We get the backstory on him. I think that was him.
I've been reading too many stories about Russians. I thought that was in the last James Reese novel where there was a bad guy whose mom was. I think that I'm mixing the two stories now.
I do remember there was a backstory for the Colonel that I thought, damn, that's pretty darn interesting. But all the details escape me.
Okay. Anyways, either way, bad guys are 4.
Yeah. Bad Guys Are 4, I'm going to agree with you. I think the chapter, if I go revisit it, that has the Colonel's background, I think was really good. But the fact that it didn't stick with me. And the other one that kind of brought this up a little bit was when Grechko is meeting with Peshkov and the oligarch who, basically is dating his girl. I kind of thought that was cool. I like the inner workings of the Kremlin. Again, it was a one-off scene. There wasn't a lot of it. So I think I'm going 4 on the bad guys. Could have been better. Definitely wasn't bad. And what's going to make up for that 4 is the good guys. I would give it more than this is a 5 plus 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 plus.
It's a 6. It's like if I can give bonus points.
Everybody, come on.
Yeah, we've done a lot of talking about them, but I think just getting us to buy into that team of Foreign Legion people that quickly, great. Absolutely. Buying into Anna Royko, great. Absolutely. Buying into the villagers, great. So
100%. Absolutely. Same with the setting. Everything about the setting is just knockout. We talked about it before. So 5 on good guys, 5 on setting. Absolute strengths of this book, which is going to make the free space interesting because I think we're going to have a lot of the same ideas. So I'm going to let you go first on that one before maybe we wrap it up with the cover. What do you think?
For me, it's the old lady in the vineyard.
Yes.
I really liked her. And just Druzia, like one taking them in, feeding them. I like the little note of like he tries to show them how to heat up the MREs using like the chem, and they're like, no, we're gonna heat this up on a pot. Like, come on, we might be in a war, but we're not savages. Like let's we can make this a meal. I don't know. It brought some more reality to it. I felt like I connected. Out of all the Ukrainians, I felt like I connected with her, and then the truck driver the best. He would be like my second option as a free space. So yeah, it's got to be the old lady.
Yeah, I think you putting all those people together is the free space. So I'm going to come up with a different one, but you put together Ole and Hivi.
Right. So it's probably all of them combined. Yeah.
All of them combined. Just all the Ukrainian people that he meets along the way are just gems, true gems in this story. I think it's maybe a little cheap, but it deserves a shout. Brad's action writing. You could say that about any thriller. I honestly, it has to be the best part of any thriller is the action sequences. But to be this good is next level. Like this is once in a series or twice in an entire series where you're going to get action this good, this thrilling, and this consistent. From the opening action scenes, every few chapters there is something thrilling that you can't put down. And so while many thrillers are going to get it right, it's a rare thing and something special to get it this right, this perfect. So I got to give it to Brad's action writing. 5 out of 5 is my free space.
All right. So this is what we've all been waiting for.
The cover.
Now,
Brad gave us some shtick.
He did. He didn't like that we didn't like the cover. I mean, I don't remember us saying we didn't like the cover. I think it was more we were intrigued with the cover.
Yeah.
And we did some sleuthing and we actually got it right. We were completely right.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that he took our reaction to the cover that way, because I would say it wasn't negative at all, but it was a little, we have to wait and see. Like we both hit the pause button and said, we're going to reserve judgment here until we read the book. And he was absolutely right. I'm making up for whatever he thought I might have thought negatively about this cover, because it deserves a 4.5. Absolutely. I can't give it a perfect 5. It very nearly is.
Yeah, I can't. Like I don't know why I can't give it a 5, because it's it's a pretty nice cover. Like the color scheme, obviously Ukrainian flag, giving us the Raven, giving us, this Ukrainian, which is like, what he was going for, this Ukrainian art piece that exists, and the Raven being on top of it, stealing it. I like that he was thinking about he wanted. I even like the title. Like the title's got just all right.
Oh, it's
You kind of called it.
blocky. It's a 4x4.
It
Yeah,
has nothing to do with the novel other than it's a cool like deadfall. Like rising tiger, deadfall. Like
exactly.
it and then he wanted to have 4 letters, just like his name is 4x4.
It
Like that's
works.
cool. It works. But for some reason, I can't give it a 5. I don't know why.
Yeah, I guess the way I would explain it is it's really well done, but will I say it's one of my favorite covers of all time?
Yeah, no. Yeah,
No. And a
exactly.
5 out of 5, I think, really has to come close to that list of this is one of my all time favorite
But
covers.
it's a
And
very good cover. But
it's
it's a very good cover.
really, really good. Yeah, it's really good. And I will say, I love the gradient. It's not just a straight yellow and blue. That yellow has a gradient pattern where it's getting darker. It almost looks textured towards the bottom. I like that dark orange, yellowy orange. And then the wing, the archangel wing, also has its own texture with the shadows on it and definitely that kind of bronzy look. So you definitely know it's some sort of art piece or statue. And the fact that it's the guardian angel, it's Michael, and he is the key protector of Ukrainian cities, and that this is a real piece. And a whole part of the book is about the attempted genocide, if you will, of destroying Ukrainian artwork that has cultural heritage and significance. And so to put a raven as a symbol on the wing of the guardian angel, the protector of the country, and it's a real culturally significant art piece, a monument, I think that's a really, really cool play right there. And for the raven to be straight jet black, it almost is like this black hole on the cover sucking you into what's almost in the dead center of it, that's sitting right inside the O of Thor. I think it's a really great composition. Love a lot of things about it. The texture as you feel it is really nice on the wing. It actually has some texture to the pattern,
Yeah,
which
on the hardcover.
on the
Yeah.
hardcover. So that's definitely another shout for this cover. So 4.5, absolutely knockout cover. Love it.
The one thing I did appreciate where he was talking about, he actually like sits down with the person instead of like someone else just generating a bunch of things, and like he picks one. Like it seemed like he actually cared about this cover. Whether or not
Yeah.
he cares about all covers, I don't know, but he actually cared about this cover. And to put something that is truly representative of the book, like
Of the
I
book. Yep.
we appreciate that.
Yep.
You
Judge
can
the
easily
cover by the
just
book.
stick like the Ukrainian flag on this something, or a wheat field, and like a man walking in a wheat field with a gun.
A running man, would you say, next to
with,
power
with
lines?
with a train,
With the
that
train in the winter.
in the winter.
Our OG Mitch Rap Pod listeners who have heard every early episode of the Mitch Rap podcast, you will get that inside.
You know what cover we're talking about.
I do appreciate, though, how Brad said they went through a couple of rounds, because it does make sense to want to have your first reaction be like, he said, the dacha, or the cabin, or in the woods with these trees. A lot of the book takes place with that. So I like the idea of the scenery of the cover should be what the book is about, which is the Ukrainian countryside with these houses, these villages. But once you actually mock that up, once you sketch that out, it kind of is like a little too on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like that he said, the art designer said, let me try something high concept. So in this cover, you capture the Ukrainian identity through art and through the color scheme. You capture Ukrainian landscape because this is an actual monument in a city. You get the spiritual and significance of it because it is the archangel. You get the dark heaviness, the weightiness of that raven, the uncertainty, the looming danger, the dark jet black raven. It's a really, really brilliant cover. Did I talk myself into a 5?
Because like the cheesier version of this is putting
The cabin
like
or the train.
No, I think the cheesier version is putting like that the famous like pillar in the middle of Kiev.
Right. That too. Yeah, exactly. Which could have worked.
Yeah, but it
Not
would
like
have been
this.
fine. It would have been fine. We're never in Kiev, or Does he go to Kiev? Goes to Kiev for like a night.
The troll does, but yeah, he stays on the train and goes right through.
Yeah. How many covers do we see? Like, oh, he goes to Istanbul, so boom, we're gonna put the Hagia Sophia on there. Like the does he ever go to the Hagia Sophia? No, he's just in Istanbul. It's like setting your story in Rome, and you only put St. Peter's Basilica on there.
Or the complete opposite. You set your story in Chicago and then you randomly, put a picture of Johannesburg. Or, because we've had that too. Or you randomly put the Kremlin in it, even though the book has nothing to do with Russia. It's about South American gang lords, and all of a sudden the Kremlin's on the cover. So that could go both ways.
Right, right. Yeah. All right. So we have some pretty high scores here, people.
I end up with a 46. I think that's a pretty good score. That's where I'm at with this book. I'm curious how that compares to Rising Tiger, but you ended up with a 47. Let's see. What did we say? How does that rank compared to our other ones?
It's got to be one of the highest Brad Thor novels.
It definitely should be, because when you are reading this book, you're the whole time thinking this is one of his best ever. I think because of the nitpicks we found and how I felt about the ending, I don't know if I could say it was his best ever, but it's definitely going to be towards the top of the list.
Now, I'll give this little service announcement. Just because I gave it might be my highest score I've ever given, doesn't mean that it's my favorite Brad Thor novel.
You are half a point higher than Takedown, which was 46.5. Are you feeling that's correct? You're about half a point higher than Takedown with this one?
No, but I laid out all the why I said it, so
sure.
It's up there with Takedown. No, I would say it's up there with Takedown.
It's up there. Sure. So of the ones we've covered so far, this is definitely in.
It's a very similar story to Takedown. This will be a nice 2-book read.
That would be an interesting one.
The team up, very centralized location, all in New York, pretty much.
This is interesting because I have it at a 46. Takedown was a 47, so I think that is accurate for me. This is maybe a notch below Takedown, but it's also half a point higher than The Apostle. I gave a 45.5. This is a 46. I think that's correct. I think this book is very close to The Apostle, but just a tad better. And I like The Apostle a lot. And I think this is a tad higher. But Rising Tiger, you were a 44.5. I was a 45.5. We loved Rising Tiger. This book is, I would say, clearly a cut above.
Yes.
So yes. I think at least
it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to compare this one to some of Brad's older ones.
Yeah, it's true.
I feel better the comparison between this and Rising Tiger and like Full Black.
Yeah,
not Full Black. Recent Brad. If we do, honestly, I think my favorite is probably Spy Master, which we haven't gotten to. I like Spy Master, and then the one right after Spy Master was that one, Backlash.
Yeah,
Backlash, I think I'm just going to give straight tense.
I think you're right. You have to compare books like Rising Tiger or Black Ice and Deadfall to
each other,
Spy Master and Backlash, because it's so different.
Yeah.
The last 7 or 8 Brad Thor books are way different than the first 7 or 8 Brad Thor books. They're almost 2 different complete series, just in the way they're composed, not in the storylines. The universe checks out. Everything's consistent.
Sure.
In universe is consistent, but the style of writing and the type of storytelling, I feel like very, very different.
Yeah, what I think our scorecard will allow us to do, and now that we're truly halfway through, we can sort of pre-rank them, and then we can go in and move them up and down as we see fit. So
I will say this to conclude. Very clearly, top 5 of all of Brad's books. Deadfall is clearly in the top 5.
I feel confident saying that. Yes,
I feel real confident. And if it gets knocked out, it's like it's right there. It can't be lower than a 6. Right? Exactly. Yeah. It's that 5-6 spot for sure. Possibly pushing a little higher.
It reminds me of like when I read Lethal Agent.
Yeah,
like a more recent mid-trap novel.
Yeah,
that I loved. I vibed with.
I think you're right. I think that's a good comparison, because you read Lethal Agent, you're like, to me, it's obviously Kyle Mills' best or tied for best, and it's clearly one of the best recent books in the entire series. So yeah, I think I feel the same way about this one.
Yep.
All right, good stuff.
All right, guys. The next time you hear from us on this feed, probably a little bit because we got some other books to read. So go check out our other two feeds, the Mitrap Pod Thriller Podcast or the Mitrap Pod Mitrap Podcast, our OG feed, where we'll be covering soon. We got to decide where we're going to put Fade. Are we going to put Fade on the Mitrap Pod? I guess that makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's got to be on the Mitrap Pod. The question is, time is getting away from us, so we might not have it before Code Red. I'm not sure. We'll have to see how that works out.
Yeah, because when does Code Red come out?
Code Red comes out mid-September, so we have less than a month, about a month to go.
So I guess while on vacation, you need to read Fade, and when we get back, when I'm in Beloit, we should do a pod on Fade.
You want to do Fade as the next book we read?
Yeah,
sure.
I think so.
All right, before Code Red.
Yeah, and then we do Code Red. We go right into Code Red.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. I'm down.
All right. We need to thank our patrons, our special operator, Sherry F., our special agents, Daryl, Kevin, George, Ben, Matt, Dawn, Peggy, Ray, Bridget, and Mark. Please subscribe, rate, and review to all 3 seasons, as I said, to No Limits, using Apple Podcast or Spotify. You can find us online at thrillerpod.com or on Twitter and Instagram at thrillerpodcast. And as always, Slava Ukraini.
Heroyam Slava.
The Zelensky thing was a little cheap at the end.
Yeah, like I was saying, that ending, just I don't know how it landed.
Did it need that? Did it need the Zelensky thing?
You know what else I was thinking about your closing? There was a really good line. I don't remember the context, but I wrote it down. I'm just a guy here to do a job.
Just a guy. Oh, yeah.
Somebody asked him, who does he say it to?
It's either one of the, I think it's one of the guys asking about, like, what are you, one of the alphabets, like year over year CIA? He's like, I'm just a guy here to do a job. Yeah.
I'm just a guy here to do a job. That would have been a good one. I forgot. The other, so I didn't have a lot of quotes, as people might have caught. If I don't have any quotes, that's just because I'm enjoying the book so much. I don't even want to take notes. But another quote I did write down was the bar in Moscow where all the bras are hanging up. And Gritchko says about his cocktail, no pyrotechnics. Shake it, serve it, and fuck off. No lighting the orange peel on fire.
No pyrotechnics.
Shake it, serve it, fuck off. I thought we can end the pod with that.
And as always, shake it, serve it, and fuck off.